Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's get right into it. All right, so just from an agenda perspective in this session itself, we're going to do a brief introduction to Power Virtual Agents. I'll show you a demo related to service desks and how you can go ahead and connect to ServiceNow using a chatbot capability. Then I'm going to pass the baton over to Pranav, and he's going to go ahead and talk about AI Builder. And then we've got a Better Together demo at the end where we're going to take all of the learnings from today and actually put them together and then show you how you can use AI Builder as part of a chatbot experience, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so I'm just going to go through a couple introductory slides on AI Build or on Power Virtual Agents, and then we'll get right into the tool itself. So for those of you that may not be familiar with Power Virtual Agents, or what's known as PVA internally, it is a conversational chatbot experience that uses natural language processing and conversational AI in order to build out chatbot experiences. Now, you might be wondering, how does this fit into the Power Platform relative to, say, the bot framework? Well, the good news is that the bot framework is a rich framework that Power Virtual Agents is actually built on top of. Now, what's different about them is really the experience has been democratized so that a broader audience can go ahead and you build these bots. And what makes it a great fit inside of the Power Platform is that we can go ahead and plug it in and leverage extensibility across other assets in the Power Platform. But naturally, there's also that grow up story as well, where if we need to take advantage of pro code, we can actually write a bot framework skill and plug it into Power Virtual Agents, which is a great opportunity. So naturally, when we think about chatbots, we want a customer or an end user to be able to engage naturally with a system. We don't want it to be, overly robotic, but we do want people to be able to communicate like they would with a human. And naturally, with all of this stuff, we do have the ability to escalate to a live agent or a human if we get in trouble from a bot perspective. And certainly inside of Power Virtual Agents, there's a great extensibility story there with Omnichannel, Dynamics 365 Omnichannel, which allows us to seamlessly transition a chatbot conversation over to a live agent where they can continue to engage with them. Naturally, when using this service, there is a lot of artificial intelligence involved in it, but it's not something that you really need to know much about. You don't need to have a master's degree in neural networks in order to go ahead and build out some of these experiences. That is all part of the SaaS solution that's part of Power Virtual Agents. Naturally, continuously enhancing your bot is a really important aspect of building a bot, and that's where we provide these analytics out of the box that allows you to see where your bots are performing well, where they may not be performing as well, and then allows you to iterate on top of it and continue to build a more immersive experience. And then lastly, and we're going to focus on this today, is we're going to allow you to actually take action, right? So there's different classifications of bots. Some start with just knowledge-based management and being able to just provide information that people might be looking for. But where we start to see real benefits is if we can actually deflect from putting on those requests to a human and actually solve it on behalf of the user. And naturally, using Power Automate and all of the connectors that exist out of the box give us that ability to do so. Now, when we think about who are Power Virtual Agents designed for, and this may sound a little cliche, but it really is for everyone, right? It's for customers where they can go ahead and interact with a chatbot experience. It's also for subject matter experts. And I think this is one of the challenges with the bot framework. As powerful as it is, if you need to go ahead and make a change, now you're starting to write code. And this is something that we've seen with some of our customers, especially with COVID, unfortunately. Like, business is changing, and it's changing super quickly. And so as a result, subject matter experts can go ahead and actually update their bot by just updating the content itself and not actually having to get developers involved to go ahead and make some of those smaller changes. And then naturally, from a IT admin and dev perspective, there's opportunities to participate here as well. I think at the end of the day, even if you are a developer, you want to spend your cycles doing the highest value work. And you updating, say, different strings of text as part of a conversation may not be the greatest use of your time. But you can go ahead and build out those components of the bot quickly and then extend as required. So just to give folks just a sense of what is the life cycle of a bot, we have a maker portal, much like Power Automate and Power Apps and Power BI, and we can go ahead and quickly create a bot. Now, one way to get started is we can actually take advantage of frequently asked questions that might be listed on a public website and ingest that into the canvas itself. And it'll start to like build out all of the scaffolding of the conversations that we might have around frequently asked questions. Naturally, we can go in and tweak all of those topics, update, remove, etc., and then go ahead and basically publish that bot. And that allows you to do something very quickly, where in a matter of a couple hours, you would have a working bot that you could actually promote to your users or expose to your users for them to go ahead and use. Naturally, in order to understand what a user is trying to achieve, we need to use artificial intelligence, and in this case, natural language processing, where we can actually accept an input from a user and then try to understand what they want to achieve and respond accordingly. Now, whenever we talk about a bot, there's going to be some extensibility stories. If we need to go ahead and talk to other systems, how are we going to do that? And this is where the deep integration with Power Automate really shines, and we can actually have our conversation and then basically pass off a specific activity to a Power Automate flow where it'll go transact for us and then basically give us a result back into the conversation itself. There's going to be some opportunities where you do need to write some code. For now, that would involve, say, adaptive cards. And those are experiences that we can actually build inside of the bot framework and reuse them as part of Power Virtual Agents. And we certainly see this with customers where they might have already built a bot framework skill and it's already used, but they want to actually transition to a more low-code approach. But they may not want to like migrate everything over, and there might be pieces of that bot that still need to be in a pro code scenario, but we can actually go ahead and plug them in. Naturally, you need to be able to publish your bot and make it accessible for a lot of folks. And this is where we can publish to a variety of different channels, whether that's a custom website, a mobile application, it could be a Power App through an iframe. It could also be internally using Microsoft Teams. And then lastly, just to close the loop, is analytics. We want to be able to measure all of our efforts and see where we should actually be, investing in further development in order to raise our customer satisfaction scores. So with that said, I'm just going to get out of slides and jump over to the Maker portal itself. And so this is Power Virtual Agents. We have our left navigation here where we can go ahead and design topics. And designing a topics might feel a little bit like flow. If you're building a flow inside of Power Automate, we can go ahead and just configure what looks like a workflow, but a workflow that really maps to a conversation that you might have. And so what we would do is we naturally need a trigger, much like we do inside of Power Automate. And in this case, I can quickly create, say, a lunch bot. And I want to be able to capture a few phrases that represent how an end user or a customer would basically start a conversation. And once we have those trigger phrases identified, we can go ahead and then author our experience. So we're just doing a quick save here to the topic, then we'll transition over to the authoring experience. And this is where we start to basically design our bot. And what we now want to do is start to ask questions of that end user or that customer based upon the topic that we're interested in. In this case, it's really around lunch. So I can go ahead and ask a question, what type of cuisine are you interested in? And here's where I have a choice of providing like my own set of answers. I can have multiple choice, or I can basically just use their response and try to understand it for myself. There's a lot of these pre-built entities that really just allow you to focus on like solving the business problem and not so much being worried about exception handling. So for example, if I ask for an email, but someone gives me a number, the bot is going to automatically say, sorry, I didn't understand. Can you please provide an email? So we don't have to do a whole lot of that error checking if we're going to go ahead and use these pre-built entities. We can also create our own entities in the scenarios where we might have domain-specific language and scenarios that we want to capture from that perspective. So here I could go ahead and just provide some different options for the user to go ahead and choose. And what you'll notice is as I'm doing this, we're actually starting to build out our workflow, and we've got a condition that's automatically been added to our canvas where we can now start to respond, well, what does that mean if it's seafood? Maybe there's specific questions around seafood. Do we want like sushi? Do we want shrimp? Do we want trout? And we can sort of further narrow that conversation down. Same thing with vegan and barbecue. And then we can also go ahead and sort of bring this conversation back together through just collapsing those conditions and reaching out to other systems as well. So that's sort of just the high-level introductory bit here. But what I wanted to do was show you a more in-depth scenario or richer scenario. And this just relates to something that you probably all have experienced in the past. This is really around building a bot for, say, a service desk. And in this case, I'm going to provide my end user the ability to go ahead and log tickets through this Power Virtual Agent's chatbot. And these tickets will be logged inside of ServiceNow. And then we'll also provide that end user the ability to go ahead and get the status of those tickets as well. So I'm just going to bring up the topic just so you can see it in action. This is a neat feature of Power Virtual Agents is we can go ahead and see the debugging live as we're actually running the bot. And naturally, we're in a test scenario here where we're right in the Maker portal, but I could go ahead and publish this bot out to other locations and then access it from, say, a website. So here are all of the different trigger phrases that could kick off this bot. And do note, they don't have to be like for like in order for the bot to actually wake up. This is where the natural language processing comes into place, and it'll try to understand what the intent is and then respond accordingly. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, I have an issue. And that should go ahead and wake up our bot and then go ahead and prompt me to log in. Now, once again, this SSO experience is seamless inside of a tool like Teams, but since I'm in the test harness itself, I get prompted to go log in. I already have a token in my browser, so that's why I didn't have to put my username and password in and then just copy that code in. Now I'm being prompted with what would I like to do from a service desk perspective? Do I have any issues? Do I have tickets? I can go ahead and create a user if I wanted, if I was a manager. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just say I'm having a network issue. I'm sure we've all, run into this as we've worked from home here the last couple of months. In this case, I have a Wi-Fi issue, and it keeps dropping on me. Now I'm getting prompted to say, what is the priority of my ticket? Oh, I should have said it was 1. I should have said it was high. My bad. And what we can see now is that we've got a ticket that has been created for me. And certainly we could go ahead and provide knowledge base articles and all of that sort of stuff, but that's not overly fun for a demo. But in this case, we do have a ticket that has been created. So I'm just going to flip over to ServiceNow, and I'm just going to refresh my screen. And here we see that we've got 064, so I can go ahead and dive into this. And now maybe I'm part of the network support team, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up this ticket and assign it to myself, and I can go ahead and add work notes and just say I reached out to the customer, but they were unavailable. And we'll just go ahead and update this ticket. And now me as the end user, I might be a little bit frustrated that my ticket's still an issue, right? Because they can't get a hold of me because I can't get on Wi-Fi. And so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and say, show my tickets. And here's where I have the ability to go ahead and then just say, I want to look at my tickets. And I have a few options here where I can say, show me my last open ticket, show me my last closed ticket, or show me my last 5 tickets. And so what I'm going to do is just go ahead and click on show me my last open ticket. And we can see that, sure enough, this is the ticket that I had just logged previously, and we have the notes that have been updated as well. So now how did I go ahead and build this? So let's just go ahead and I won't go through all of this naturally, but just to give you a sense of the flow. So here we've got the trigger phrases, and provided there's something related to a help desk scenario, we're going to wake up this specific conversation. I'm going to prompt it for a login. Now in this case, I am federated with Azure Active Directory. We do support any OAuth 2 providers, and in this case, it naturally Azure AD is a great fit. When I am successfully logged in, we're going to have a token that's logged, and we also have a Boolean value that's automatically populated indicating that I am logged in. Naturally, if that login fails, I can provide a message saying there's an issue logging you in. Here, I'm going to go ahead now and start to ask questions about what is my issue related to, And in the case of, let's just go with the My Service Desk tickets, I'm going to then have a branch that's focused on this specific topic. We're then going to go ahead and just provide a message saying I can help you get your tickets. And then I'm going to break the question down into another question where it says, okay, well, what sort of tickets are you looking at? Your last ticket, your last closed ticket, or your last 5 tickets? And so here I'm capturing what those values are. And I have a variable that's just called ticket type. So regardless of which option I choose, I'm assigning it to this ticket type. And then what I can do is just collapse because it's all consistent, regardless of which one I choose. I pass it into the flow the same way. And so what I have here is a flow where I'm going to pass in the auth token. And then I'm also going to pass in that ticket type. And I can go ahead and just click on this link, and it's going to bring up the flow itself. And now what makes Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents really easy to work together is through a dedicated connector and a dedicated trigger and action that we can go ahead and use. And so as part of that experience, I need to expose input parameters, and that's what I've done here. And when I do that on the canvas inside of PVA, it automatically gets updated to reflect those inputs so that I know that I have to go ahead and pass them in. Now, what I do have here is just some variables just to track specific information around the work notes and description and ticket number, etc. But I also want to know who I'm talking to. And I'm able to do so through that auth token that was captured inside of Power Virtual Agents and then passed to Power Automate. And so that's what I've got here. I'm going to go ahead and call graph based upon their token itself. Now, in this case, when you set up your Azure AD authentication, you have to indicate what are the scopes that you're interested in capturing. And if you're interested in capturing a lot or something that requires a lot of access, you do require admin consent. In this case, that's not one of those scenarios, but do note that there is some oversight by an admin before you would go ahead and do something like that. And so part of the reason why I want to go ahead and capture or retrieve the auth token is so that I can go ahead and look up the user inside of ServiceNow so that when I go ahead and log that ticket, I'm logging it on their behalf, not as a system account. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do here is get the system ID for my specific user inside of ServiceNow. Here's where I'm going to be focused on the ticket type. So based on the different type of ticket, I'm going to adjust my ServiceNow call as appropriate. In this case, it was my last open ticket. So I go ahead and I want to look up the incidents table, and then I want to go ahead and have a query to basically filter based upon the caller ID and the type of incident state, like is it new, is it pending, is it on hold, and then also be able to filter on the created on date, descending, and then limit to just the top record. And from there, once I have that record, I can go ahead and see if there's any work notes. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to go into the journal field table and then basically look for any work notes related to that ticket. Here, I'm just going to go through, naturally I can have multiple work notes, so I'm going to go through a loop and just append to a string. These funny characters are markdown just to provide a little bit more of rich formatting so that I can go ahead and return a richer description back to the end user, and that's what's going on here. Once I've got all of that message basically constructed, I'm going to go ahead and just return it through this action back to the Power Virtual Agent canvas and then basically display it to the user. So with that said, I'm going to transition back to Pranav, and he's going to run you through AI Builder, and then we're going to come together at the end and basically show a better together demo.
Hopefully folks can see the screen. So I'm going to just quickly talk about what is AI Builder, show a demo, and then we'll look at the end-to-end demo when Power Virtual Agent and AI Builder come together. So effectively, what AI Builder is helping us solve is digitize as much information as possible. And how it's enabling us to do is by providing this low-code experience where you don't have to know data science or you don't have to know any of the machine learning frameworks. It sort of provides a single, simple, easy-to-use model where you can bring in your data and then you can build your model and consume it within your apps or automation. So this is what AI Builder looks like for detecting objects. And it's a common component that you can use across Power Apps, Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. I'm going to skip through a few slides that you can sort of refer offline, but just sort of kept it here. And what I wanted to focus was the different scenarios that we have enabled with AI Builder. So these are the three different sort of pillars that we have, which you can use for predicting some outcomes, or you can analyze like text for sentiment analysis, or detecting some key phrases, or categorizing text. So examples, document classification. And you can use like vision-based technology to do scenarios around like scanning business card and then entering data into your CRM channel, or doing forms processing, which is around invoice recognition, detecting objects, like counting the number of objects or detecting what kind of images are there, and then given a piece of paper which could have handwritten text, you can recognize the text and digitize this information as well. So this is an example of what forms processing looks like, where a business would receive invoices for creating a purchase order, or like an advance payable scenario, and they want to extract the vendor information, or the invoice name, or the invoice amount, and then enter it into your automation. And some of the key improvements that have happened over here is we support handwritten text as well. And now you can you can tag certain areas which are not picked up automatically by AI Builder, and you can support forms for large sizes as well. And let's see a quick demo of forms processing. So this is what the AI Builder canvas looks like. This the same canvas is available both in Power Apps and in Power Automate as well. You can go ahead and start building your model by just giving it a name. And in this screen, it's giving you some best practices on how to build a better model. The next step is around adding your documents. Some of the key enhancements that have happened is we now support uploading from SharePoint and blob storage as well. So in this case, I'm just going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to upload these 5 invoices, which is going to upload the 5 invoices into AI Builder. The next step is analyze, which is in this step, the AI Builder service is analyzing the document structure to see if you have a header or a table, what's the length of table, how many pages do you have. And so it's going to extract all this metadata. And then the next step in this process is going to be around selecting the form fields that have been picked up by the model. And as a best practice, we're looking to get at least 5 sample documents, which should be a good representation of what are all the vendor formats that your app or your automation might deal with over here. I think while that's coming up is what you also want to make sure is like all these documents are fairly good representative. So the next steps are I can select with the detected fields. I can also there's a new feature in preview where I can tag areas which are not detected. I can resize those areas as well. So let's see it in action. So these are some of the fields that the AI Builder model picked up automatically. But as you can see, like let's say the from field, I can say this is the from field, and I can say the bill to field, I don't want all the information, but I just want the name. So I can say this is the bill to field, and then I can extract the balance amount. I can extract the table. So it's like it extracts the table, and then you can itemize the table as well. And if there are certain sections of the form sort of that are not recognized, then you can draw a bounded box over here and then recognize it, and you can give it a name. So this becomes your total. And then you can say confirm fields. And then you can go ahead to sort of all the documents, and then you can select the fields that you want over there. And so the build to, it says draw in the document. And then the total one, since I custom, I drew it myself, so I have to go to each and every document and just make sure that I tag those certain areas. And this helps you to sort of take care of cases when the vendor formats can change and the position of those information inside the documents can sort of change as well. So this helps you to take care of those scenarios where the format can change. And then I can say done, and I can say next, and I can say train. And this basically takes a couple of minutes to train, and then you're ready to sort of go ahead and consume this model as well. So while this training, I'm just going to show you some other ways where you can scale this particular scenario. And so what we saw was how quickly you can build an invoice processing to process invoices and then include it in your apps or automation. Generally, what happens from large scale enterprises perspective, you want to probably do invoice processing at scale, where you're receiving invoices from multiple vendors. They might have different formats. And so you want a system in place which is going to help you manage all these invoices. You might have different roles where you might have somebody label the forms, you might have somebody correct the forms. So you want a system to manage all these invoices. And we've released an invoice processing kit that you can install in your own environment, and then you can customize it based on your scenario. And this is a link to that blog post over there. What the kit allows you to do is, invoice processing at scale. So you're receiving lots of invoices. There are different formats, and you want to probably create a structure where you have different roles in the system, where there's a solution maker, there's a laborer who's tagging the areas as what I showed you. And there's an admin persona as well who's reviewing all the invoices that were tagged correctly or incorrectly, and they can retag those areas and retrain the model. So this helps you manage this invoice processing at scale. And effectively, what the model is, you can have different providers or vendor formats who are sending you emails with the invoices, and then this processing toolkit, which is a combination of Power Automate, AI Builder, and Power Apps, helps you process these invoices and manage these models. So let's go back and let's look at a demo. So we saw that this forms processing model was trained, and to consume it, what you have to do is you can just quickly publish it, and then it'll be ready for consumption. But I wanted to show you sort of this invoice processing toolkit. This is what the toolkit looks like. It's a Power App, and there's a Power Automate and an AI Builder component. It effectively lets you manage different providers. So here I can add a provider. I can give it a name, and I can say who's going to send me this invoice. I can also have providers by region. I can go next. Then I can select what model should I associate with that particular provider. So I just trained this model, and I can select this, and I can select what all fields I want from this particular invoice. So these are the standard fields that we have, and I can map the fields that I need to parse. And then from the invoices perspective, if I receive new invoices, they'll start showing up. So I've already processed a few invoices, and then sort of you can see if the invoice was processed or not. So this gives you a sort of a management perspective across all of these scenarios. So just to summarize, like invoice processing just helps you manage. This toolkit just helps you manage invoice processing at scale, where you might have different vendor formats and you want to manage these multiple AI Builder forms processing models and have some feedback system in place where an admin can review and recorrect the tags. And besides forms processing, we have lots of different scenarios, and I'm just going to quickly run through it so you get a flavor of it. We have prediction, key phrase extraction, sentiment analysis to analyze the text. You can do category classification for document classification, object detection, where you can recognize and count things in images, text recognition, which is given an image, it's going to retrieve all the text from that image. So these are the right variety of scenarios that we have with AI Builder that you can build easily without having any knowledge of data science. Kent, over to you.
Sure, thanks, Pranav. There was one question, I think it kind of got answered. It was just around, I just wanted to get it on your radar. There was just questions around like dealing with multiple types of invoices from multiple parties. So looks like you did answer that question through the toolkit that you described, but feel free to check out the meeting chat there if you want to add any information, but looks like you hit the mark on that one, which is cool. All right, so we're just going to talk a little bit about like the Better Together story here, and just have a scenario just to sort of describe this as well. Now, in this particular case, we've got a mother who has gone and purchased a scarf or ordered a scarf for her daughter. Now, what is, I guess, interesting about this scenario is that the mother lives in the Pacific Northwest in the US, and the daughter lives in the East Coast. And so what's happened is the mother's purchased the scarf in store or ordered it in store, and was going to get it shipped to her daughter. And but what's happened is that the daughter has a big event coming up here, and the mother wants to know if she can go ahead and fast track and rush that order. And so how we're going to go ahead and do this is we're going to actually achieve this through a chatbot scenario. And we're actually going to go ahead and use the AI Builder prediction capabilities that Pranav had described in order to determine whether or not this is something that's feasible. We don't want to be setting poor expectations for the customer if this just isn't realistic and probable. So I'm going to start on the left-hand side. So we're going to expose this experience through a chatbot naturally. We're going to go ahead and take advantage of the Power Virtual Agents connector inside of Power Automate. We're also going to leverage the common data service. So all of this product and customer data is stored inside of CDS. And then what we can do is take advantage of the AI Builder connector, and there's a real-time prediction action that now exists in order to go ahead and to predict whether or not this would be possible, and then we're going to give that response back to our customer. Now, we'll get Pranav just to provide some commentary. He had built the AI Builder model in this case, and what we can do is just flip to the data itself just to give you a flavor of what this looks like.
So in this case, what we're using is the AI Builder model for prediction. What I showed you was forms processing. And the data here is a tabular data set, which is captured from an e-commerce site, which has details on the orders, the order date, the freight value, the price of the order. And if effectively it has a column called order is delivered on time. No, this is the one that Kent is highlighting. So this is what the training data set looked like, and this is what we used to train the AI Builder model on. And what we're going to predict is, given order that the customer is placing, whether the order would be delivered on time or not. And in the next tab, what we have over there is the AI Builder model that we have built.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's already open
Okay,
in the
here we go.
next.
Sorry, I thought I closed it. My bad.
Yeah, no. So this is the model that we built using the same data set. Again, you don't have to know data science. You just have to upload your data into CDS and then train this model. And then Kent will show you how to consume this model in Power Virtual Agents.
And naturally, the more data that you do train it with, the more diverse data you have, the more accurate it will become as well. So in this case, 65%, we would probably want to add some additional data here, but for the purpose of this demo, I think this will do. Now, what I'm going to
use 50 rows just to train the data. That's why we're getting a B. But yeah, as Ken was saying, if you add more, you'll get a better accuracy.
And we did take advantage of some of the sample data that does exist in GitHub that has been made available as part of the AI Builder samples as well. So what we have here is the chatbot experience. Now, this is a different chatbot than I had showed you before with ServiceNow. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and trigger it by typing in order status. And naturally, we don't have this user in Azure Active Directory, but we're going to want to do some level of validation of who they are once we get through this next question. There's no need to validate someone if they just are interested in store hours, but in this case, we're interested in expedited shipping. So we're going to go ahead, and I've got my cheat sheet here of the customer name, and then also need to provide their customer ID in order to validate they are who they say they are. And then next up, what we're going to do is go ahead and retrieve their latest order. And naturally, we can go ahead and configure this as needed. But in this case, here's our plaid scarf that has a current ship date of 06/30, so June 30th. And so what we could go ahead and do is say, I want to see if I can get this shipped by the 25th instead. And so at this point, we're going to actually kick out to the flow that we had talked about before. Actually, there's two flows in this scenario, and we're going to actually run a prediction. And in this case, our model gives us an indication that it is likely. There's an 81% chance that we could actually get this order to the customer on time based on their new date. And so we can go ahead and then just ask them if this is something they're interested in pursuing, and then go ahead and update the ship date, and then basically say, yeah, did that answer my question? And then actually provide a survey. And just on this survey bit, this is the information that actually gets sent back to our analytics. And this is an easy way for you to start tracking the CSAT or DSAT, depending upon which angle you're looking at. And so that concludes the bot itself from the bot experience. Now, we do see that we have a couple flows here. The first one was just really around getting their orders, because we did show the scarf right here. And so that represents getting the latest order for that specific customer. And here's where we're leveraging CDS to store all of that customer data. I've just got some variables just to store some of the information. And then you're going to go ahead and do filter queries on a specific entity for that customer. And then what we can go ahead and do is just go ahead and get their products by, once again, filtering out their data. And what I'm just using here is just some variables to go ahead and enrich the data. One thing you do note is when you have a Power Virtual Agent action, in my experience, it works best to have a single action at the end. And so you want to be able to construct your content upstream, and then basically just have a shared variable that you can go ahead and use as your output. So you basically have just a single output back to the Power Virtual Agent canvas. And in this case, if we couldn't have validated the customer ID and their name, we would actually just say, sorry, we can't validate your information. But otherwise, we can go ahead and pull out information from CDS in order to display that back to the customer. And in this case, we're also going to pass back the order ID just so that we don't have to prompt them again. Now, in terms of all of this markup here, so this is Markdown. And so this might be something you're not aware of, is that you can use Markdown to send richer content back to the Power Virtual Agent canvas. Now, we don't support adaptive cards just yet from a low-code perspective, but this is one way where you can improve the richness of the formatting that goes back to the customer. And this is how I'm going to go ahead and display that image, is basically using the markdown for a URL, and I'm passing the URL that is being stored inside of CDS itself. So that's flow number one, and that gets us basically to this action right here. Now, the second flow is where we're going to go ahead and perform the prediction. And so once we've asked for the new ship date, we can go ahead and call out to this specific Power Automate flow. And so same thing, we've got inputs that we need to be able to leverage in order to get the data. So in this case, we've got an order ID and we've got a new delivery date. And so what we want to do is we need to provide a bunch of information as part of the prediction call itself. So we're going to go ahead and look up that data for that specific order inside of CDS. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is use this. There's a dedicated connector inside of Power Automate now for AI Builder. And then in this case, we're going to go ahead and use predict. And in this case, what we're calling is that model that Pranav had previously showed and created, and then just pass these inputs in. And so, some of these are going to be based upon existing data that we do have. And then basically we're going to inject these new data attributes that help us form that prediction itself. And as we saw on the screenshot with the AI Builder model, there's specific fields that have more weight than others. In our case, what we found, and this was just in general, just based on the data that was created itself, was the freight value and the price were two fields that had a greater indication. And I guess it kind of makes sense. Sending a scarf and expediting a scarf is probably something that's quite easy to do. But if you tried to escalate the shipment of a piano or a large dresser or a dining room table, those are things where there's going to be more constraints. And so that's what we found within the model itself. And then once again, we're going to go ahead and capture some values here. We're going to just do some parsing. We get this very long percentage string, and we wanted just to represent that as a percentage itself. And then once again, use a little bit of markdown in order to go ahead and provide that response back to the Power Virtual Agents canvas. And so that concludes that specific demo itself. Now, I wanted to call out a few action items here, or call to actions, and then we'll be happy to take any questions that you might have. So Power Virtual Agents in a day. Manuela had pasted that link in chat previously, but this is something that you can go ahead and run through. We've had a lot of great feedback on this specific content. You can download it, it's free, and basically go through the different exercises. And then also the AI Builder. We've got Microsoft Learn and a series of different activities and a learning path that you can actually leverage to ramp up on AI Builder. And then also Pranav had previously shared the new toolkit that helps you manage diverse invoices coming into that model itself. So with that, I guess we'd open up for questions.